Hey all, DT Neil, talking to you about storytelling things, writerly things, genre, fiction, fantasy, horror, science fiction. My previous posts I did about the hell of space exploration, space colonization, those are all, I don't want to harsh anybody's celestial buzz, people who really like idealistically think about space exploration, and that's absolutely fine. It's, of course. I just recognize that we have a massive amount of lifting to do as a species, both in terms of just internally, like who we are, and externally in terms of logistics. We will have to radically progress economically, culturally, psychologically, all those things. It's impossible to really, on its own, space is hugely challenging, just on the logistics of it, the mechanics of it, let alone all those other things that have to change for us to be able to expand our footprint in space. And maybe there is, in earlier posts I've done earlier this year, I think, there was certainly an idea of a writerly idea, and I'm speaking again from the sci-fi perspective, that there was an idea of progress and the unbreakable chain of human advancement toward the stars, and us moving forward in that way. And now, unfortunately, where we are in this what is really kind of a liminal period between either cultural collapse or we overcome certain obstacles that are preventing us from progressing. Those things are keeping us squarely confined to this planet. But there is an opportunity, I suppose, for writers, science fiction writers particularly, to envision maybe how we get there, to inspire. There's just two ways of looking at it. If you're creatively inclined, if you're a writer, you think, well, there is no future, and either the apocalyptic view, post-apocalyptic world, some kind of eco-political cultural disaster occurs that ends civilization as we know it. That's impossible. That's the brick wall. That's that idea of that's possibly a great filter that is waiting there to end us. There is also the optimistic view that maybe we do get past it, but I think we're at the point, contrasting to previous generations, where we can't just naively assume we're going to just solve those problems. Oh, we could solve world hunger now if we wanted to. If certain powers that are hoarding resources just decided, yeah, we should actually save these populations and world hunger. The IMF might be like, yeah, we don't want you growing food crops. We want you growing rubber plants or cotton. That mindset has to change in some fashion if we're to progress. But there is room, I suppose, still for idealistic and optimistic science fiction writers to envision those futures. It's just that those futures, I think, they will have to be more narratively complex. You can't just take for granted and say, oh, well, we don't have money anymore. It's like, oh, really? How'd that happen? And how on earth could we imagine, no pun intended, could we imagine the people who have all the money right now saying, oh, yes, we will not do money anymore? They won't. I know, sorry for the British accent, but it just kind of played with it. I mean, the first joint stock companies were British. Hello. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I think in previous generations, they just blithely assumed, well, we just get past those problems. But now I think people are like, well, how? How is that going to happen? How are we going to have a more just and equitable future? And is that even possible under the current socioeconomic order? And I think many people could offer pretty clear opinions on that. So in the realm of imagination, which is always, that's the baseline for writers, we owe it perhaps to readers and the world to think of those solutions to those problems that aren't just blithe, oh yeah, we used to have a problem with racism, but we solved that. Anybody today would be like, oh really, how did you solve that? How did that happen? Instead of just saying, oh, that's great, and now I get on my little moon scooter and fly to, the domed city for the shopping expo that I want to do. It's like that has to change. And it is perhaps in some quarters, but in terms of the overarching perception of science fiction, I feel like everyday people don't see that. And I think sci-fi writers, and now and in the foreseeable future, while we still have writers, human writers, by the way, not AI, I don't include them, that's going to be some heavy lifting. I have a few space colonization story ideas that reflect what I've been talking about, and they will have life in some fashion when I get to them. I got another bunch of other things to work. I already talked about the cyberpunk stuff. I've got a utopian sci-fi story that's coming out, a novel that's coming out in month of August. There are other things that are currently front and center for me, but down the road, I may explore that. Pun absolutely intended in that case. I did that with Farther, from several years ago, which was kind of a really cosmic horror in space, but it was that idea of just in that one I allowed for wormhole technology, which allowed for people to zip across the cosmos, and still get into trouble. And I did try to explore some of those aspects of the mercantile preoccupations in space exploration, because the technology would allow for that to occur without much social transformation. So I've done that before. There are other avenues to additionally explore in that, and I can see it very clearly. But in our day-to-day lives, when we look around in the world, like, we do have to get our own house in order, meaning Earth, before we have a hope of flying up into the stars.